Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today, as you can see, we will be running through our Premier League predictions for the upcoming 2022 to 2023 season. I have done my table predictions and kind of split it up into different sections, which we'll be going through today. I'm only doing the Premier League and not the lower leagues as, to be honest, I just don't know enough about them. But we're going to go through each team and just give like a little bit of detail as to why I've kind of put them in each position. So let's get it. Okay then guys, so as you can see, I've got the bottom three on screen there. Starting off with Bournemouth, for me personally, I really feel that they will struggle this year. They've not really recruited particularly well, in my opinion. Joe Rothwell and Tav from Borough are both probably decent players, but not sure they're quite ready for the Premier League yet. Neither of them have ever kicked a ball in the Prem. I think Ryan Fredericks is quite a good signing, but he's the only one they've really signed so far. I've seen that they are linked with the Barcelona goalkeeper Neto, but again, I'm not sure it really makes them a huge amount stronger. It's nice to see managers keeping faith with the players that kind of got them up in the first place, although I did see that there was an article the other day where Scott Parker had said that they're actually weaker than when they first came up, or than last year. So for me, I really think they will struggle. I'd be surprised if they hit 25 points this season, and I think they'll just go straight back down. In 19th place, I've gone for Fulham. Marco Silva's not got the best record in the Premier League. He did do well last year, but the likes of Hull and Watford and even Everton, he has struggled. They've just signed Bernd Leno in goal, who I think will make them stronger, and they're still looking at getting a centre-back in as well, which will definitely make them a bit stronger. But again, I just don't think they have enough quality at the moment. They've made a couple of additions in midfield, but pretty similarly to Bournemouth, I just don't think they'll have enough. I think they'll be more competitive, but I think Bournemouth and Fulham will be down pretty early on. They won't make it any sort of like interesting battle at the end of the year, maybe for the final spot, but those two I think will go down. And in 18th place, the final relegation spot, we have gone for Everton. A bit of an interesting one. Obviously they were down there last year, but I don't think they've ever actually been relegated, or there's some weird stat that like they've played in every Premier League season or something. They obviously lost their main sort of goal scorer in Richarlison, and they've not really replaced him. They brought in Dwight McNeil, but he's not a massive goal scorer. And there's a lot of pressure on Calvert-Lewin to score the goals, but he's got quite a bad injury record. He's set to miss the start of the season, or at least the opener, Goodison Park against Chelsea. And I don't think they quite have enough. They've been linked with a couple of Chelsea players, obviously due to Frank Lampard's links, likes of Barkley and Batshuayi, which could make them stronger. But I don't know, they could kind of be similar to Dele Alli, where he came in from like a big club. It was like a bit of a step down in his career, but one that you kind of look at and go, okay, he should be happy to play football, but he's not really kicked on. And to be honest, I don't think they're quite signing the right players. Tarkowski's decent business, but again, it's kind of like buying players who have been down there from Burnley, who have been fighting relegation. They're not really pushing on. So I've put Everton in 18th because I do think they will struggle. Next up, as we bring up the next part of the table, we have Leeds United in 17th. They've lost their key men, Calvin Phillips and Rafinha, but I think they have replaced them pretty well with Tyler Adams from RB Leipzig and Luis Sinisterra from the Eredivisie. Bamford should be back this season, considering he stays fit, and he will score goals. They're a much better side with Bamford in. I think they will be sort of down there, scrapping for survival, but I think they've got more quality than the other teams. And I do think they will stay up this year. Next up, we have Nottingham Forest, the third of the newly promoted team. I do think they'll stay up. A lot of people are expecting quite a lot from them. I think they will be down there, but sort of relatively comfortable. Bought in a lot of players. The front three of Brennan Johnson, Lingard and Awoniyi, who's come in from the Bundesliga, has a lot of threat and probably quite a few goals as well, which will be important for them. They've also improved in both wing-back areas and built on what was already a pretty solid defence from last year. They got a good manager in Steve Cooper. The thing to worry about for Forest is it could be a case of, they've come up and spent quite a lot of money. Could they go straight back down like Fulham did a few years ago? But I think personally they will stay up, and I think they'll be one of those that could potentially be pulled into it, but have enough quality to stay up. Next up in 15th place, we have Southampton. For me personally, one that could be, again, pulled into that sort of relegation fight. Signed a lot of good young players, but no one really with a lot of experience. They lost Broja back to Chelsea, who didn't score a lot of goals last year, but he was kind of their main focal point. And I don't see them scoring a lot of goals. The board and the owners have put a lot of sort of faith in Ralph Hasenhüttl, kind of bringing in those younger players. I think they'll have enough to survive, but they could be one that get dragged into the sort of relegation fight. In 14th place, we have gone for Brentford. It's obviously their second season in the top flight after a pretty sturdy first season. Very good manager in Thomas Frank, and improved defensively, bringing in Aaron Hickey from the Serie A and also Ben Mee on a free. Ivan Toney and Mbermo are very dangerous going forward. I think they'll obviously miss Christian Eriksen, who's gone to Man United, but I think they'll be pretty comfortable in terms of safety. Kind of bottom half of mid-table, but comfortable. Next up in 13th place, we have Wolves, who have been in the top flight for quite a few seasons, obviously now pushed for Europe a few times. Looked as if they might again last year, but they really fell off at the back end of last year. Bruno Lage, the manager's not really been backed in the transfer window. They've not really brought in any big names, but they'll have Pedro Neto back, who's had a pre-season back with the squad, and Jimenez and Adama, if he stays, will provide quite a good front three for them. I think they'll be safe, but they won't be pushing for Europe, and they'll just have a pretty mediocre season, in my opinion. In 12th place, we have Leicester. Now, it's one that I was tempted to maybe even move a bit lower. Quite worried for them this season with, I believe they're the only team not to have made any signings so far. Kasper Schmeichel, I think it's now a done deal that he has left for Nice in the French league. And they've also been linked with losing James Maddison and also Wesley Fofana for the end of the window, which leaves them a little bit short and sort of scrambling to replace them at the last minute. Like I say, that they're one that could be a lot lower. They've definitely got weaker. They could potentially finish lower than 12th, but I've put them there just because they've still got that Premier League know-how. So 12th for Leicester. In 11th place, so just outside the top half, we have gone for Crystal Palace. Had a great first season under Vieira. Haven't really made any major signings so far, apart from Decore, again from the French league. But I do think he will fit in well into that midfield, bring them a bit more mobility, some more legs. They obviously lost Conor Gallagher, who brought that last year. But I think for Palace, again, they'll be sort of in and around mid-table, pretty comfortable, and I think they'll be quite happy with another season where they're in that sort of middle of the pack. Okay, then next up in 10th place we have Brighton. Not too sure what's going on with the PowerPoint. The boxes are all over the place, but you can see what we've got going on. Say in 10th at Brighton, big fan of Graham Potter in charge. Similarly to Palace, they play good football under the manager. They haven't really made any major signings as of yet and lost Bissouma and potentially Cucurella, who looks as if he's on his way to Chelsea. But I do think they have enough quality and they're very strong at the back as well. If they get Levi Colwill from Chelsea in a separate deal as well, I think that's great business for them. I think they'll be competing for the top half again. Kind of worry about a lack of goals for them, which has been their problem for a while now. But they finished 9th last year, I believe, so had a really strong season, and I think they'll be up there again. In 9th place, we have Aston Villa, a bit of a controversial one. A lot of people think they may struggle this year, but personally, I think now that they've had a full season for a lot of the new players that they signed last year, and for Gerrard as well to kind of settle in, I think they will be stronger. Coutinho's come back on a permanent deal, which for me is great business from them, and also Kamara and Diego Carlos make them a lot stronger defensively. I think players like Leon Bailey, if he can stay fit, and also Danny Ings could mean that they have a much better season and are pushing to challenge for Europe. In 8th place, we have Newcastle. Again, a lot of people have them quite high. They've had the huge Saudi takeover last year, which does mean there's a lot more expectation on them to finish higher in the league. They finished the season last year really, really strong under Eddie Howe, who's kind of bought into the philosophy. And I think players like Nick Pope and Sven Botman will make them a lot stronger in defence. They've obviously got Dan Burn, who came in January. And if they can keep St Maximan and Wilson fit, then they're going to be a threat going forward as well. And honestly, I really do think they'll be up there if they play like they did at the end of last year. I think they will be challenging for the European places. Next up in 7th place, we have West Ham. The main point for me is that they managed to keep hold of Rice. I honestly thought there'd be a lot more interest, a lot of stories flying about, but it's kind of been one that's under the radar so far, if there has been anything. They've improved the defence with the signings of Areola and the centre-back Aguard. They finally brought in another striker to compete with Antonio and provide a bit of cover with Scamacca from Sassuolo, and I just think Moyes is building something at West Ham. I don't think they're quite ready to push the so-called top 6 as of yet, and I think they will finish 7th again and claim the Conference League spot. Next up in 6th place, we have Manchester United. I think a lot of Man United fans are quite optimistic about the season. For me, I think they will actually struggle again. Obviously, they've got Erik ten Hag as manager now, but I think there's still issues with Ronaldo, and those sort of attitude problems can spread throughout the squad if people start getting unhappy. Like I said earlier, when mentioning Brentford, I think Eriksen will be a great signing for Manchester United. Not sure on the other two that they've brought in from the Dutch league, Malacia and Martinez. Haven't seen a huge amount of either of them, but it's tough coming to the Premier League. We've seen it with players like Ziyech and Van der Beek who have come in from that league and struggled. So interesting to see how they get on at United. Rashford, Sancho and Martial all struggled over the last few years. A lot seem to think they will kick on under Ten Hag, but personally, I don't see it happening. The club is still in a huge mess all the way from the top down, and I think they'll struggle again this year. 5th place, so just missing out on the Champions League, we have Arsenal. A lot of people optimistic about them this year. Maybe the process that all the Arsenal fans have been told to trust is starting to take shape. Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko are both really good signings from City, in my opinion. Also heard a lot of good things about Vieira, who's come in from Porto. They managed to shift a bit Deadwood as well. A couple of players that weren't really in and around the team last year. But I still don't think they're good enough defensively, especially as centre-back to get top 4. But I think it'll be close between Arsenal, Spurs and Chelsea for the 2 top 4 spots that are sort of available. One of them will miss out, and for me, I went for Arsenal. I think playing Thursday nights in Europe as well is also going to make it tough, whilst Chelsea and Spurs are going to be playing in the Champions League. So for me, Arsenal are in 5th. Next up, and we'll reveal them one by one. Top 4 have gone for Spurs in 4th. You could argue that they've had one of the best transfer windows so far, with a lot of players coming in that seem to suit Antonio Conte and his system. As I say, they are back in the Champions League, so it will be a test of their squad depth, and they've brought in a lot of players to sort of provide cover in sort of the full-back positions and centre-back. Obviously, spent a lot on Richarlison, which could be seen as an overspend, but he can play anywhere across the front 3. But Kane, Son and Kulusevski formed a great front 3 latter end of last season. And I think that front 3 is just more dangerous than Arsenal's, which is why I've put Spurs above Arsenal in 4. Next up in 3rd, possibly another controversial one, I have gone for Chelsea, which is the team that I do support, so I may be a little bit biased. I trust in Tuchel and the new owners as well. I think Koulibaly will be a great replacement for Rudiger, obviously left on a free, and Sterling definitely adds something that we didn't have last year to the front line. Still not sure on the the attack, as in like an out-and-out number 9. Not sure it's Havertz's best position, and I like Broja, but I'm not sure if he's quite ready to step up. But we saw it with Tammy Abraham, who did a good job when he was at Chelsea and maybe got forced out a little bit. So interesting to see how they get on. I think they will be the closest to City and Liverpool while still being some way off. But I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in another 3, 4, maybe even 5 players before the end of the window. So it'll be interesting to see if they can compete. Like I said, I still think they're a little way off, but will be above the rest and will finish in 3rd. Okay, then the last 2, Liverpool and City left. Obviously, the last few years have been between those 2 for the title, and this year in 2nd place, I've gone for Liverpool again. They had a great win over City in the Community Shield, which always kind of gets you ready for the new season. I do think it'll be another really tight one between those 2. I think they will pull away again. Still think Liverpool lack another centre mid, maybe the likes of Bellingham, who they've been linked with potentially for next summer. But Diaz has now had 6 months to sort of bed in at Liverpool, and I think he's a good replacement for Mane. Núñez, I wasn't sure on. It could be very hit or miss, but he did make a really good impact in the Community Shield against City, who are arguably the best team in England. So interesting to see how he gets on. I think Liverpool have another good season, as you would always expect from them. But I have gone, as you can see, for City to top them again and win the league. The reason for this is they just have a know-how of how to get the job done over a 38-game season. You know, they struggled at the beginning of last year a little bit, lost to Spurs on the opening day and lost in the Community Shield, but they have the players to go on a 15, 20-game winning streak to close out the season. Haaland, obviously, like Núñez, has sort of come in as like the traditional number 9, and in theory should be a goal machine for them. Would expect him to score a lot of goals, but they did struggle to get him into the game against Liverpool, so it will be interesting to see how sort of City adapt to having that sort of player up front. They have so much class in midfield. De Bruyne, Bernardo, Rodri. They've brought in Phillips as well. Gundogan's still there. These sorts of players that are just so dangerous on the ball. And once again, I do just think they will pip Liverpool to the league title, as they have for the last few years. I think they've won it 4 out of the last 5. It's been very close a lot of the time, but I think City will have it again. But anyway, that is the end of our Premier League predictions for next season. Not sure why the table is sort of all over the place. It's gone a bit mad, but you can see the outline of where we've kind of put teams. Let me know what you think of the predictions, if you disagree, where you think teams will finish, and I'll catch you soon. Peace.